Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Nuance Needed podcast. This is Sam Dalton, and today I am graced with the incredible Dr. Audra Horney, who is a therapist like myself, but she works specifically with men. And with a lot of the things that we've been chatting about on the pod lately, and I think things that we can all see happening just outside of our windows, I think we have a lot of questions for the men and the people that are supporting them and helping them. So, Audra, thank you for being here today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Oh my God, of course. Now, tell the people a little bit about yourself. What's your background? Who are you? What do you do? Fill us in.
I am a licensed psychologist. I currently live in Phoenix, Arizona, but I've bounced around a lot. I actually grew up outside of the Midwest and then have been kind of all corners of the country with education, bopping around through my life. But home base is now Arizona. And this is where I have my private practice, which I've had a solo practice for a few years, and I've been licensed for close to 10. So before my solo practice, I was in group practice. And yes, I am a therapist for men, which I'm seeing more female therapists for men pop up in the last few years since I kind of emerged from the shadows. But it's still pretty common for me to talk to either therapists or just really anyone and to tell them I'm a therapist for men and have them be fairly shocked, grateful, surprised, but curious about how one comes to become a therapist for men when that's certainly not my lived experience.
Right. Well, and I feel if I go back to like my grad school days, pretty much all they ever talked about is like, if you work with the opposite sex, you're going to want to have sex with them. Like, I feel like that was really the only messaging or training that was given on it. At least, like, if I look back reflectively, I feel like that was all the conversation was.
Same. And my training, both in my master's program and my doctoral program, was like heavy emphasis on multiculturalism and social justice. And so I got a ton of diversity training. And also, when it talked around gender, and in particular working with men, it was very much around the ethics, the caution, the dangers even, and unfortunately not the clinical competence or the interventions or strategies that might be effective. And I can even remember in some of my earliest training experiences, I mean, from the beginning, I look back and it's so obvious that I'm a therapist for men now. Mm-hmm. Like some of my earliest clients, my first client ever, and many of my early clients were men. Most of my clinical supervisors were men. Just kind of, I think, luck of the draw, or maybe the universe knew something I didn't know. But I can still remember early in my training conversations with my supervisors that seemed to focus a lot more on potential, like what's called erotic transference in the therapeutic relationship, like client having more romantic feelings towards their therapist, or even vice versa. Then I really got support around, general, like clinically, how things are going and the strong rapport and connection and growth and progress that's being seen in these clients. So yeah, I completely agree that, and I also did not pursue this focus in grad school at all. It's something that really found me after school in my clinical training, just like being in the work. And so it was not present in my training. I've really learned sort of like street smarts in how to do this work and like firsthand working with clients and then pursuing my own training to make sure that I'm not just acting intuitively based on what I think is good, but like I'm actually showing up for men in a way that is like clinically supported and evidence-based, because I didn't get that training explicitly.
I really like that you brought that up because, as I just said, like neither did I. But even in more depth, it feels that in our training programs, it is very, and I'm going to say this with a grain of salt, like a feminine energy, I find.
Totally.
In the programs. It's very validation centered. It's very softness centered. It's almost the assumption that like, yeah, because we're all going to be working with women.
Totally. Yeah. I've been known to say, and I say it regularly, that I do believe therapy itself is a feminized resource. And the data supports, right? The majority of therapists are women and the majority of clients are women. That doesn't mean 99% of us are women, but it does skew in that direction. But even beyond that, like you said, I think a lot of the interventions, even the soft skills, right? Like quote unquote beginning counseling skills, we later get maybe into some of like the heavy hitter interventions that really help our clients, like skills, the tangible strategies. Even if you pull up a therapist website, I think oftentimes, even if a therapist is more of a generalist and really open to a wide array of clients, I think oftentimes the marketing skews more in a feminine direction and maybe unintentionally excludes men from seeing therapy as a place for them.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard that feedback from a male client?
Men?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, all the time. All the time. I mean, that's one of the things that's been so powerful about me showing up on social media these last few years is that I'm getting feedback from men far beyond, the handful that are in my office every week that really do want support and have considered therapy or wondered, could this be helpful? Or had people in their life say, like, have you thought about therapy? Or maybe less supportively encouraged or pushed towards therapy. Then these men are going to look for a therapist and they literally can't find a therapist that's specialized in men's mental health. Or they're finding a therapist whose website describes a woman's lived experience or other more gender expansive people's experiences. Maybe even feel like they are like actively omitted from the list of like clients or presenting concerns or experiences that a therapist may specialize in. And so, therapists are, and some therapists will very explicitly say they do not work with men. And I don't fault those therapists. But it is a more common experience for a woman, in my experience personally, and what I've heard is from others is, I can identify 20 random variables and find a therapist down the road who checks all the boxes. And these men are just struggling to find anyone who says they work with men.
I guess this is humbling for me because we yell at them to get help.
Get to therapy.
Get to therapy.
Go figure your shit out.
Yeah. Go talk about it. Go, stop expecting us to do like the emotional labor and yada, yada.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And then, which has elements of truth to it.
1000%.
Yet, yeah. Is there this complete blind spot that we've missed without really realizing it? Like even me, I'm sitting here in kind of this realization of like, oh my God, I've never even sat in this space of being reflective of this, because I think it's just my focus, my whole career, kind of similarly to how you feel the universe was like setting you up to work with men. I felt mine was in the reverse. All of my supervisors were women. The, clients that I related to the best were women from their lived experience. I had access to, experience with domestic violence and, relational issues and life transitions and just my own life and my own work. The one time my training was heavily focused on more men was when I was at the VA hospital in Salt Lake City. And I worked with the geriatric population, which was World War II Korean and Vietnam vets. And I just got so burned by like the overt, full-chested sexism and ageism and all of that I think it just kind of made me on a professional level be like, those aren't my people. Like,
totally.
I don't have what it takes to do that. So yeah, I think so many of us, we end up just assuming. And then if you go into private practice, it's a business. And so they tell you, speak to your ideal client.
Right. Niche down.
Yeah. Niche down, speak to your ideal customer. And so you end up speaking to the people that you feel best to work with. And I think so many of us just don't include men in that because we assume there's somebody out there doing it.
Totally. And I strongly encourage therapists to do that. Like, yeah. I think the most successful therapist is the one that's going to do the work they love, that they're really good at.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that is someone who reflects some of your own lived experiences and identities, and like, amazing. Thank you, therapists, for showing up honestly, authentically, and doing great work. And I know a lot of therapists now who love their work with male clients, but aren't necessarily marketing the fact that they love their work with male clients, to the extent that when I started showing up on social media just a few years ago, right alongside when I was opening up my own private practice, and like you said, like speaking to my ideal client, I can vividly remember the conversation with my husband where like he's known, you know, for the 7 years leading up to that I am like, the joke during my internship year at a university counseling center was that Audra is specializing in profoundly depressed bros, because I was just like, the 19 to 20-year-olds were just like filing in and out of my office, and like it wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
And so this is just the work that like in-house in the agencies I've worked at, these are the referrals I'd ask for, the clients that would get transferred to me. But then I'm starting my own practice, and I want to be showing up on social media because I love the opportunity for advocacy and education and creativity. Yep. And I'm like, okay, they tell me I'm going to be speaking to my ideal audience. And granted, there are so many therapists on social media now, and of course 3 years ago. But I literally found one other female therapist for men, and she was in Canada. And so
whoa,
I'm sitting there saying, okay, well, like this is going to be a component of my marketing for my practice. And I guess I'm just going to dive in and be a really small fish in a big pond. That feels like a risk, a little bit of imposter syndrome, the like, oh gosh, what am I opening myself up to? Kind of like, who am I to say that I am an expert on this, despite the years I know that I've had behind closed doors doing this work. But we're not talking about decades ago that I was like, and then I decided to talk about being a therapist for men. This is a few years ago, and it's still not an overwhelming number of therapists that are showing up, female therapists in particular, talking about this work. And so it was pretty quick that my social media channels started to take off, and my DMs were flooded with men being like, how do I find a therapist? How do I make sure it's somebody safe? How do I know they actually want to work with me? Which led me to then create a directory of therapists who were willing to like kind of, you know, name themselves, raise their hands and say, yeah, I'm a therapist who loves working with men too, because
wow,
I mean, there were far too many men reaching out to me than I could see, and internationally. And so as soon as I showed up and said, hey, like, here's my style as a therapist, therapies for men, like really my early content was like just normalizing therapy. Like, hey, I have a practice of men because men are going to therapy. Like that was really what my message was initially. It was just like, hey guys, men are going to therapy. It's not just we're telling you to go to therapy, they're going. But then so many men were showing up saying like, well, I don't know how to find a therapist. How do I know that therapist feels safe with me in their office, wants me in their office? Or guys who had really negative experiences in therapy, and they were like, I don't know if I could try that again. I felt like I got burned, and it feels like a risk to put myself out there again if, you know, therapy hasn't historically felt like a safe space for me.
God, I am like really humbled right now because I
feel like I like shell shocked you just now.
No, this is good. This is good for me because I can get, you know, as therapists, we're not immune from just kind of honing in on our own world and hearing what my clients who are
hearing
all
what
women,
your clients say.
Right. Hearing what they say.
Who are in pain.
Yes.
As a result of their experiences with men.
Yes. Yes. And even on a personal level, the disappointment and the hurt that I've experienced, you know, from men, especially because I identify as straight. So I, you know, dating them and things like that. It's not easy. And I also feel that women have only, you know, and I'm going to be preaching to the choir with this, but I think just for the sake of making this thought make sense, I think for me on a personal level, something that I've been wrestling with is this feeling that over the last 10 years with the explosion of the manosphere and that whole disaster and the podcast bros and everything that the current administration is encouraging, Christian nationalism, the whole thing. Right. I have felt incredibly defensive watching men tell me that they feel lonely when it feels like this is the first time the world hasn't perfectly catered to them. And if you look at like the span of history and how women have been treated for millennia, And now it feels like the last 50 years since we've been able to get credit cards, we've hustled and we've worked and we've made lives for ourselves, and we're still crawling over broken glass in a lot of ways in these systems that are perpetuated by them. And now all of a sudden we're almost inching our way to the top, and they're like, whoa, you can't do that. Like, that's not the natural order, and all of the other garbage that they spew. And so I think for me, I'm a little like, okay, well, you're going to have to go do the work then. You're going to have to go do the work that I did on myself to figure out how to overcome these things and how to work through loneliness and disconnection and triggers and trauma and all of that.
Yeah.
And I think there's truth in me feeling that way. But then also I'm sitting here now and I'm like, oh, did we even build an infrastructure that allowed them to feel that they could do this work that they need to do, that I'm telling them they should do, but then I send them into a dead end?
I mean, pun very much intended. There's so much nuance here.
Yes.
And it is, the idea of like hashtag not all men. It's like, like fuck these hashtags. Like,
yes.
It's just because it is so complicated. And I can tell you that I have horrible trolls, seemingly male identified trolls in my comments, bots or not, right? Like there's room for this discourse. And I have men in my office, men in my DMs, men in my comment sections, men sending me thank you emails that are just saying, finally, like, thank you. I have wondered if I could do anything about this. I just had shut it down in myself. I didn't know where to start. I just had my first session and it went so well. I found a therapist off your directory and they were amazing. And now I have guys in my comment sections, especially on TikTok. It's like this, TikTok, all these things have their flaws, but like the reality is for me on TikTok, it is blown up because men who follow me over there have this degree of anonymity. It's like Reddit with videos. Like there's nameless, faceless accounts, which allows people to say some awful things. And it also allows men to say some really vulnerable things. And so I have men in my comment section saying, I don't know if I can do it. I'm exhausted. I don't think I'm worth it. And other men commenting saying, I know you've got this. If you need somebody to talk to, my DMs are open. It took me a few times to find a therapist. You got to shop around a little bit. Like there's this community there that most men don't have in their own lives. Like I do. Right. I could open up my text. I probably have unread texts from my girlfriends right now about their last session in therapy and what's going on in their life, and a 20-minute audio note to listen to on my drive home today.
Exactly.
Men don't have that. And so, am I a little bit conflicted, I guess, when I think about it, about the fact that I'm a woman who's helped build that? Like, I guess if I think about my role in the system, but like the reality is like, this feels like such like I'm lit up by this work. I'm so passionate about it. So like, why not? Why not me? Yeah. If I feel pulled and called towards it. And I can tell you confidently that when I've created the spaces, men are there and I'm not having to moderate that. I mean, to the extent now that, I don't even have to moderate my trolls because my audience jumps in and they're like, how dare you? Like, we're protecting Audra at all costs. We ride at dawn. Like, don't you dare say that to her. And so I'm seeing the best version of men, whether they're in their like evolved state or their sort of like earliest phases of like believing they're worth anything. And it is a result of creating a space where there's permission for them to maybe lean in a little bit more to that feminine, but just to express a little bit more emotionality. And honestly, more than anything, show up with authenticity.
In your experience with being a content creator that is specifically speaking to men, in addition to your private practice and your work and your history, and I'm sure the coaching and the mentoring that you're doing for other therapists, what would you say has brought us here to this crisis that men are experiencing in terms of loneliness and disconnection and overwhelm?
I do believe that we all play a part in that. We are all existing in the same system together and we are all socialized in this system. Like even if we're speaking around like the patriarchal system that we are all in, like little boys are socialized within that system and little girls are socialized within that system. And that means we are socialized in the ways that we personally behave and also the ways we expect others to behave.
Yep.
And so there's research that shows that baby boys are more emotionally expressive than baby girls until they're a few years old. And then it shifts, like until the socialization kicks in and we're giving, little girls, and I'm speaking in, binary here, and there are more nuanced experiences within that, but we offer little girls more empathy, compassion. They get hurt emotionally or physically, and we tend to them. And very early on, little boys get the feedback that, like, we don't cry, brush it off, you're okay. Little girls are encouraged to have, relationships with their friends in ways that are different than little boys. And so even if we're, the most like woke, feminist, open, liberal-minded people, parents even, the world is a powerful force. And so then, like, we fast forward a bit and we think maybe just even men in their 20s or 30s in more serious romantic relationships, and let's just speak, heterosexual relationships with women. I think women now feel like we have so much more, like, not just permission, but like a right to say, here's what I expect, and these are my standards. I'm not lowering this bar, and it is not hysterical of me to expect you to not be emotionally stoic and guarded and walled off. My experience with the clients who I work with and a lot of the clients online, and granted, there's a selection bias there, but my experience with a lot of men is that they want more emotionally intimate relationships, and they have no idea how the fuck to do it. Like, what do you mean you want me to be more emotionally open? You want me to, a lot of men take that as like, okay, she wants me to like share how I'm feeling, or maybe like cry or be more vulnerable. And then oftentimes they get experienced, like the reaction they get from partners is like, I can't take care of you. This is more emotional labor for me, because it certainly can be. I think oftentimes female partners are asking for their male partners to be more like be there to emotionally hold me and like emotionally care for me. And the reality is a lot of men haven't been taught how to do that, as well as women have, who were able to like have the baby doll and play house and play school and like role model and practice all of these experiences. And so it is oftentimes, and I don't want to just like let men off the hook. It's not that it's not their responsibility to learn these things, but the conversations I'm having in like the privacy of my office is men saying like, I don't exactly know what she's asking for. I don't exactly know how to do this. I'm scared to do this because honestly, when I did this, when I was age 5 to age 15, I was bullied. I was ridiculed. I was outcast. Like I wasn't seen as attractive, like whatever it might be. I had these experiences that taught me to shut that part of myself down. And so there is a learning curve there. And I don't believe that it's that like men don't want to learn, but they don't know, again, circling back to, how do men find a really great therapist that they can work with? Like if therapy is a space for a lot of men to do that work, but we're sending them into a field that doesn't make it super easy for them to find a great therapist that's going to approach them in a culturally competent way that like really sees them. And, the same way we do with any other like salient identities that our clients may bring into the room, like we honor that, right? Like we accommodate that. We want to make sure that that feels inclusive. But if men aren't getting that, they're not feeling seen and understood, then again, this is not to say you can't like buy some books and watch some YouTube videos. Like there are ways to learn. And also I think oftentimes as like adult women, we're like, come on, step up. But we've had the luxury of being able to practice this emotionality, this vulnerability, this emotional intimacy in our relationships since we were 5 years old.
I mean, yes. That's my first reaction. I think thinking of it in that way, like it truly is like the thing that was just like shooting across my mind really is like, fuck the patriarchy, right? And I think this is what gets dismissed by the podcast bros in the manosphere and some of these other people that benefit from the maintenance of the patriarchy, right? Is patriarchy hurts everybody. Women are oppressed, men are oppressed within the system. Just because the oppression is different doesn't make it less.
Right.
And we are all being harmed living in the system that we're living in that perpetuates the power structure.
Yeah, men are expected to be emotionally stoic, hyper independent, dominant. These are the rules they're expected to follow to, a podcast bro would tell you to like be attractive, to get the woman, like make a lot of money, right? These are the things you have to do to stand a chance, but nowhere in there is, being emotionally intelligent and authentic even.
Do you ever have men come to you and push back on being taught these things? Do you have men coming to you and saying like, well, why do I have to be open? Why do I have to listen to her in this way? Like, why does it matter? Do you see that?
I will say that I, online and in my office, experience men, at different degrees of like adhering to some of these gendered roles or expectations. And some who maybe have more like traditional values and some more progressive values. I work in Arizona, so I see people, politically across the spectrum, ideologically from all over. And if you've found me on social media, you could probably read between the lines of like kind of what I stand for and what I believe men deserve. But I'll say that even the men that I work with that have more conservative or traditional values for themselves or in their relationships are talking to me because something's not working. Right. And so like that's usually the inroad is, I'll joke with clients sometimes who will in early sessions sit on my couch and say things like, like it's like really not that bad, it's fine, or this is working, or it's worked well enough. And I'm like, dude, like if we were grabbing a beer at the bar, I'd be like, cool, sounds great. But like you happen to be in a therapist's office right now. So like something's not working. And I'm guessing you're here because even if it's worked for you for 40 years, that's hit some sort of expiration date. And so that's usually my inroad is I'm not interacting with these guys because everything's sunshine and rainbows. Like we're talking because something doesn't feel like it's working. And usually it is their lived experience is not lining up with how their life looks on paper. Like, oh, I should be happier. I should be enjoying this. I should feel successful. And I don't. Why don't I? And it's recognizing there's like this emotional disconnection with themselves and in their relationships that is getting in the way of them feeling joy and worthiness in their lives anymore.
What is the rate of narcissism?
In my office?
Yeah, that you're seeing in clients.
It's so low. It's so low.
I appreciate this so much because I think speaking mental health content creator to mental health content creator, I have really struggled online seeing the amount of this is narcissist, he's a narcissist, he was a narcissist, and it's like, well, if everybody's a narcissist, no one is a narcissist. So
yes.
But I get upset because I think what that does is it distracts from the ability for people to heal. When we just like throw, especially, and you and I know this even more so, like when we start throwing around personality disorders, that becomes identity. Because there is no med that's going to make
okay. Yeah. Guess I'm a narcissist.
Guess I'm narcissistic. And, for women, it's borderline, right? If we throw the borderline identity at them, it's like, okay, I guess this is who I am. So I was like really wanting to get your take on that. And are you seeing, because we know there are narcissistic behaviors, right? That people can engage in depending on the situation and the trigger. But I wanted to get your take of, are there themes of maybe some of these like more narcissistic leaning behaviors that you're seeing? Or is that not even a problem that you're really dealing with?
It's genuinely not a problem. And I know there is some like selection bias there of like the clients, the people who choose to see me, right?
Right.
And I would say clinically, like most people who like actually have like a clinical narcissistic personality disorder are not going to therapy. Like may be dragged to couples therapy, but they're not willing. And like I don't see court ordered clients, right? And so like those are usually, just like so people know, those are usually not the people who opt into therapy. But I can say that more often than not, what I hear from men, and I'll speak generally to like on social media and in my office for like client confidentiality's sake, right? I'm speaking more broadly, is I hear from men who are so trapped in their own shame and insecurities and self-doubt that then they say, I'm so in my head. I feel like I can't get out of it. Oh my gosh, am I a narcissist? Like I'm only thinking about like how I might be disappointing them or letting them down. And I have to educate men on what narcissism is not.
Yeah. And it starts with, if you're asking that question, you're not it.
You're not. Exactly. That is always what I start with. Yeah. Always what I start with. And so like, that's what I'm hearing more often than not. And like, don't get me wrong. Like, anyone in the business of working with human beings, like you said, there are narcissistic traits. We all score somewhere on a narcissism scale. And so are there going to be some men who are much more fiercely like defended and maybe, enter into a relationship wanting to puff themselves up a bit and put their status or their career or their money or like the name dropping, like, are there, just like women, right? Like there are ways that we defend ourselves. And I do think that that is something we can see. Mm-hmm. But in terms of like actual narcissism, I mean, I would say that I hear more about narcissistic partners and parents than I do interact with narcissistic men.
That is, it's almost healing. I think for me, if I like take off my therapist hat and I put on like my personal hat, I think these are things that obviously, like, I know. And I hope no one's listening to this being like, Sam, why are you rocked that men have feelings? Like, that's not that's not the approach I'm taking. No. I think what I was really excited to talk to you about is I think, like anything, social media bastardizes anything that ends up on its platform.
Yes, yes.
And I know the messages that I receive about men, the things that I see from men, the interview clips that I see, the podcast clips, the things that we see from this administration, the way the stories women share, right?
Oh, it's disgusting.
It's disgusting and it's deplorable. And I think what happens is when you're in that echo chamber, you can't help but think like, well, that's everybody now. And that can happen for anything. And I think that is what's happening in the manosphere to men in regards to women.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
The Nick Fuenteses of it all, who are, saying like women are useless. We need breeding farms. We don't need them. We're fine. Da 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 da. Which I think, from a clinical perspective, we can say like, well, is this like closeted behavior? Like you're too shameful to come out and say, I actually am myself as a man attracted to other men. So I have to villainize women in order to like justify my own like sexuality to avoid the shame. Right. That's a whole podcast unto itself. Mm-hmm. But I think what I was really excited to hear from you is like, what is the reality of doing this work? And, what, from like a therapist perspective and a personal perspective, what do you think needs to start shifting in order for these men to even just feel like more empowered to speak about these things and express what's going on with them and like seek help?
I'll say that like that first question of like, what is it like being a therapist for men, right? Like it is the most, and I think most therapists who really love their work would say this, like I get to know the best people in the world. Like I get to build relationships with such amazing people that, I'm brought to tears when they're done with therapy with me because they feel so proud of themselves and so true to themselves and that they get to go on and live this amazing life. Like I get to connect with the most like dynamic, emotionally deep, sensitive men on a regular basis. And I get to witness, everything they have endured and all the reasons why they shouldn't be sitting in my office, why like they shouldn't be like, holy hell, how did you survive everything? And like, how are you trusting anyone right now, let alone a woman, to create space for you and to help you and to watch them grow is just like, I feel so lucky to do what I do. And I see why I can, as a woman in the world, I know why it may be hard for some women to believe me when I say this.
Yeah.
Or
absolutely.
to think it's just this tiny sliver of men that are seeking me out. I have only been on TikTok, I think, for a year and a half. And I have, I think now, like over 120,000 followers that are mostly men. And my content is therapy. It is mental health. It's emotionality. It's vulnerability. Like, I'm not repackaging it. I'm not trying to sell it in this palatable way. Like, it's therapy content and they are there for it. And I feel so lucky for that. I think that, as to your second question around like what can therapists and women really do here, how can we make sure that men know there is this space for this? I think that for let me speak specifically to therapists. I think, if we're going to welcome men into our offices, and we as female therapists should make sure like we've done our own work to make sure that we are ready for that. Because I do sit with anger at times. I do sit with, vulnerability that shows up in a way that is very different than it shows up with women. Like it is not, there are certainly similarities between my work, with men and then other clients, but there are differences to that as well. And men are sometimes seeking something else for themselves or pulling something else from me. And so I think as female therapists, making sure that if we are welcoming men into our office, that it is, as we would with any other identities, making sure that it is an inclusive space for that. And, I guess similarly with women, in our relationships with men, like recognizing that the most sort of like educated, progressive, like open-minded men are still carrying these expectations around like being a protector and being a provider and knowing the things and being tough and not, they may not agree that a put down to them is being considered a woman, but they're also feeling this internalized pressure to like, quote unquote, be a man. And so I think just being aware of the fact that men aren't immune to like gendered discrimination in their lives. But beyond that, I think the most valuable thing women can do, like women who have relationships with men that like you love, like the men, I think too often we talk about like men.
Right.
And we talk about like podcast bros or the manosphere, right? And like when we talk that globally, like there's a lot of shit we could say. But I encourage you to think about like a man in your life who you really care for, who you would want to reach out to you if he was struggling, because a lot of these men, men have the highest suicide rate, and it is at staggering numbers because most of them are suffering in silence. And so think about a man and how you would want to be there for him, how hard it might be for him to open up to you, and just being present with him if he ever does trust you in that way. Because most of these men aren't looking for much other than someone who seems to give a shit, because a lot of them have convinced themselves that no one does. And that there's no space for them to struggle, because as we talked about in the beginning, like damn, like women have been kind of at this for a long time. And like, yeah, guys, like it's hard, but like buck up and do the work. But that doesn't mean that it isn't hard. Right. And so men are feeling like oftentimes in this trap of like, okay, well, I'm being told to go to therapy and work on my shit, but I'm also like, there's not really much room for me to say that I'm struggling, right? Like the backlash around even like the loneliness epidemic. And there are things that social media blows up, but it's a little bit of like a catch-22 for men. Like, okay, I'm being told I need to work on my shit, but then I'm also being told that I shouldn't complain and I have it so easy. And it's like, ooh, okay, well, which one is it?
Ooh, that's a fair contradiction.
It's tricky because like both things are true.
Yes, right. Nuance.
Exactly.
I like this question when you were just giving that very eloquent answer. The question that was coming to my mind is, okay, kind of thinking of my lived experience, both professionally and personally, and thinking of from like as a woman, the depth of the connections that I have with the other women in my life. my friends, my professional connections, my family members, right? Like just this, as a woman, I'm sure you know, as you said, you have like a 20-minute voice note. I know I have a 10-minute one waiting to go.
Yeah, can't wait.
Can't wait. It's going to be great. I'll take notes. Yep. Like, don't worry, babe. I got it. Like, so I guess the thought that I'm having is there legitimately a disconnect on us understanding how men express their feeling? And are we as women sometimes, and I'm not blaming anybody, this is just kind of exploring this idea. Are we as women often approaching men as if we are approaching another woman and expecting them to emote in the way we would see a friend or a sister or a mother or a female colleague emote? I
think so. Yeah.
And when they don't give that immediate, like, oh my God, girl, yeah. Like, you know, like we immediately go, you
embracing hands.
Yes.
And, right.
And crying and, you know, like, I see you. Thank you. Like, I want you to open up to me. Like, okay, I opened up to you. You open up to me now. That's how we do it. Vulnerable. Right. What, like, this is a long roundabout way to get to this, but what could we do or what are we missing that would help make men feel comfortable to express what they're feeling? And what does it look like? And I'm not trying to say that I'm like describing an alien here, but like if maybe we're recognizing that we as women are expecting to communicate with another woman when we're talking about our feelings, what should we be looking for with men?
It's such a good question, because I do think it looks different. It can look different. Yeah. You know, just in the same way that, you know, I myself, I know one of the reasons I love my work with men is because emotionally I relate to them a lot. I'm not a very emotionally expressive person. I'm more private. I'm pretty walled. Like a lot of my lived experience, I'm not a man, but a lot of the ways that I interact in my world is like from a more maybe dominant or masculine energy. So I think it is one of the reasons why the work with my male clients feels so intuitive to me, because, you know, like this is my demeanor with my clients. Like it is
same.
It is right. Like, and it's just, this is who I am and this is how we roll. And it's very natural. And the sessions I have, even the really emotional sessions I have with men are some of the ones that have the most like hilarious humor that pops up, right? Like we're coming up for air in a way that like, I know I'm not calling that a defense mechanism. I'm not saying you're being avoidant. Like we're getting a breath and then I'm going to say like, that was hilarious. Now let's get back to it.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, I'm getting more of the verbal processing with men in my office than I think women generally should expect from men in their lives. Like they're coming here. A lot of my clients want to see me in person because it's like so separate from their life. They don't even want to have a session virtually from their car. They're like, no, I need to be in your office and, you know what it smells like and what it looks like. And like nobody's walking by. There's such permission there. But that doesn't mean that they're going back into their lives and showing up in their relationships that same emotionally like expressive way. And so when we're talking about like what we might expect or look for in men like in our lives, like they're showing us how they're feeling for like days, weeks, months, years before they're telling us how they're feeling. And so when you see him diving into more sort of like escape behaviors, he doesn't seem like he's got the energy that he used to. He's waking up in the middle of the night. He's drinking a little bit more. He is, you feel that heaviness. I think a natural inclination that, women have is like, what's going on? How are you feeling? Like, talk to me. Like, tell me, how can I help? And, for some men, they don't know how to name it. They feel so numb that they don't even, they're like, where do you want me to start? Right? Like this started back when I was 7 years old. I've just been burying it since then. Or it feels so vulnerable, such a risk to say anything. And I think if we can notice that, like the physical, the behavioral changes, and what so many men want is for us to just like give them a hug, to say, I'm worried about you. And I just want you to know I'm here for you. And that presence without asking any more, kind of like slowly just showing like I'm here. And then the other piece of it, and I'll be honest, this is a piece that it is hard for me in my own marriage to a man, is that when they are emotionally opening up, we have to be really careful not to communicate indirectly or directly that they're doing it wrong.
That's tough.
I know. Talk to my husband.
That's a tough one.
It's really hard because like we have the words, we have the skills, it's going to be like clunkier for them. They're not going to use the I statements as often. Like it's going to be messier. And so maybe that's it, is like letting it be a little bit messier. And if in that moment when he's opening up, we can just like bite our cheeks and clench our fists and be there and say like, thank you so much for telling me, without having to like intervene or edit at all. If we have to come back to something later, fine. Please don't weaponize it. Like men on the internet love to scream about women weaponizing their vulnerability. But like, I think there is a way that you can kind of come back and make him feel like he regrets opening up. But like if you really want him to open up, right? And that's another thing, is like, ask yourself, do I actually want him to open up with me, or do I want him to be more emotionally present for me?
Oh, Audra.
I'm sorry.
Girl.
I'm sorry. But like that, I think
so
there's
good.
truth there, right? Like I want my husband to be emotionally attentive to me. But if I'm telling him, I need you to be more emotional, I want more emotional connection in the relationship, and then he starts like kind of sharing with me how he's struggling, or even things maybe I've done that are causing him to struggle, I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, excuse you.
slow down the train, right?
Yeah.
But like that's something I think if we really want him to feel safe, we have to be aware of like, what are we really asking for? And so then to be more explicit, like if what we really want is for him to like emotionally hold us, like emotionally be there for me, then let him know what that means. Like let him know, I just need you to tell me when I unload about my day, you're telling me like that fucking sucks. Like no wonder you feel that way. That's all I need to hear. Right. But like educating him a little bit, because again, like these guys, even the ones like the guys I work with are like just so sensitive and so emotional at their core, but they learned so early to like kick that to the curb that they're working at a deficit now. So if we want that, we got to work with it. And it's going to be some emotional labor. And this is where I come in. Like, this is where you say, follow Dr. Audra on Instagram or TikTok, or here's her directory of therapists for men. Like, you can search for someone and reach out. Like, there are resources. Like, that's the other piece, is like, as a field, I think therapists, I believe we have a duty. If we're going to be some of the people saying like men need to do the work, then it's on us to make sure there's a place they can go to do the work.
All right, if you're listening to this and feeling like something has landed, I want you to pay attention to that, because when that happens, it's not a coincidence. And if you've been thinking about therapy, but you've really had not great luck, you want someone who gets it, not just clinically, but personally, I want to share with you about my practice, Therapy for Women Center. All of our therapists have actually been through the things we treat, whether that's trauma, anxiety, eating disorders, parenthood. When you're sitting there and talking about hard things, you know that the person on the other side really gets it. That's really why I started my practice, because I was sick of going to therapists who didn't fully understand the things that they were treating. At this point, we have over 30 therapists, and we actually hand match you to the right one based on what you're going through. And if we don't get the match right, we'll waive your intake fee and help you switch to another therapist in the practice. We really feel like finding the right therapist shouldn't feel like another thing to white knuckle through. When you reach out to us, you can talk to our intake coordinator, you can email us, you can text us. We'd love to hear from you. We serve 42 states online, in person in the Philadelphia area, but right now we have immediate openings in North Carolina, Arizona, Florida, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and many more, South Carolina, Ohio. We'd love to support you if you're looking for a new therapist. Reach out to us at therapyforwomencenter.com, or you can text us at 215-847-6749.
I like that you brought up that conversation piece of making sure women actually know what they want, because what I find in my client work and just in general, right? This isn't me like speaking to any one particular situation, but just like larger trend, is so often I will ask people, when was the last time you actually articulated in a clear sentence what your needs are? And there's plenty of times where I get, but, and I'm like, no. I don't want to talk about the passive aggressive moment. I don't want to talk about the passive comment. I don't want to talk about the silent treatment. I want to talk about, when was the last time you sat them down in the whites of their eyes and you said, I need blankety blankety blank. And this isn't like I encourage women in, because I think we as women are horrible at swallowing our needs. So much so that we don't even take time to even acknowledge what they are. And so it creates this chasm between this person that doesn't have the tools to be a mind reader.
Right.
But nobody is meant to be a mind reader, right? But then this other person that has felt rejected, right? And not held. And so they just keep it to themselves and they make all these assumptions of like, well, it's not going to go well if I say it anyway, so I'm not going to say it, but I'm definitely mad about it. And I'm going to let you know that I'm mad about it. Right.
Yeah. Resentment is growing.
Resentment is growing, and it is a forest. And then, I think more often than not, that's where we get the guys being like, what do you want me to say? Like, what do you want me to do? Like, I did that. Right. And then it's just like the chasm gets bigger and bigger. So I really like that you brought up that element of us as women being honest with ourselves about what our needs are and taking the time to articulate that in a safe way. And I'm also very glad you brought up emotional labor, because I think that is something that gets weaponized across the spectrum all the time. Like, having to listen to somebody is not emotional labor. It's just not. You said something interesting too, that these men come in your office and they're so open, right? And so verbal in this space, but then go home and kind of revert back to this role that they believe that they need to have. Are men wanting to be like expressive in the way they are with you in other areas of their life? Or is there a feeling of like, well, I get that out here and then I can kind of go out and be a little more distant with it over here?
It is varied. But I will say there are absolutely plenty of men out there who want that emotional, intellectual intimacy in their relationships, whether it be their friendships or the relationships with their family or partner or kids. And sometimes I see a pattern where these guys who maybe have been so restricted for so long have developed a community around them of people who are okay with that or who wanted that. And so it's like a little bit of the like self-fulfilling prophecy of like, oh, wait, now I don't have people who, even a female partner maybe, who wants that from me. She wants me to be stoic and I'm the strong one and I'm the rock. And so sometimes that can be tricky. But so men, by and large, like men aren't coming to therapy just to be like, okay, I will be emotionally vulnerable here and nowhere else. Like, might they dig in deeper and might they have more of as all of our clients do. That's what therapy is, right? A place where you can say, I've never told anyone this before. I don't plan on telling anyone else, but I want to dig into this here. And so, yes, that happens. And also, so many of these men are wanting this, especially in like their male friendships, but they all believe they're the only ones who want that. And the research shows this is true for teenage boys. This is true for adult men. Like, they all think they all would like more emotional connection in their relationships, and they all believe they are the only one who wants emotional connection in their relationships. And so I think, encouraging men to join like men's groups, and whether it be, something more like formalized and therapeutic or like within a church setting or a sports setting, because it's a reason why next month I'm actually co-hosting a men's retreat, my first men's retreat, because I continue to have men in my office saying, I want deeper connections with other men. I don't know how to do that. It's scary. I don't think anybody else wants that. And I was like, okay, like maybe if I build it, they will come. And so these are the experiences men are craving. But again, like they don't know where to find it. And it feels really risky when the world and like there are these loud voices saying, this is what it's like. This is what it is to be a man. And this is what it is to be successful. And anything else is a failure. Or maybe they even have experiences with romantic partners who reiterate that. But yeah, men want support. Men want connection. Men are emotional beings. They are looking for a safe place to be that. I think there's a saying, I don't know who to credit this to, but it's the idea that a woman's greatest fear is that a man will kill her, and a man's greatest fear is that a woman will laugh at him. And the reality is that like women live with like a feeling of like a physical threat to our safety all the time. Like we're clued in all the time of like, am I safe? What's he doing? Where am I going? Where am I standing? Is it too dark? Like always. And my experience is that men have that same thing around their emotional safety of like, who can I be? What can I say? Are they going to make fun of me? Am I going to be judged? What is she thinking? And so they're tiptoeing around their lives, watching out for these emotional landmines, the way that we might around our own physical safety.
It is so frustrating, the level of risk that we have to walk, and the calculus and the 4D chess that we have to be playing out in the world, even if we are partnered, even if we have a brother, even if we have if we have a dad, right? Like it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. No,
it doesn't matter. And yet I feel like why we're stuck between a rock and a hard place is at some point, it's like at some point we have to acknowledge that the emotional safety is also a challenge, right? And maybe there's a world where it definitely doesn't supersede the physical threat, but also like to start actually taking that seriously and say like, well, if we want things to be different in this world, if we want things to be approached differently, it's going to require some adjustment from us in our expectations and what we feel comfortable with and how we advocate for ourselves as women. And how we raise our sons and the boundaries we have with our sons and, leaving bad relationships. And again, I know that's a loaded podcast thing unto itself, right? Like we know that it takes on average 7 times for a woman to leave an abusive relationship. But I like that earlier you brought up, think of a man. Like think of a man that you have a relationship with and a man that you care for.
Yeah,
and
what
like
does he deserve?
Exactly. Yeah. And again, this isn't an apologist thing, because what I would like to hear your perspective on now is, because these are men that I have no warm feeling for, the manosphere. I would really love to know what you're seeing in your office or your colleagues who also specialize in this. Like, how is this impacting men? What are you seeing with that?
I mean, it's impacting them. It's reaching them. I have received feedback from followers of mine on TikTok that as soon as they start engaging with my content, they start getting fed red pill content. And so I have been viewed now as on, I guess, the on-ramp by the algorithm to the manosphere. And the manosphere is such a broad term, right?
Well,
like
yeah,
there is pretty benign and harmless dude stuff in the manosphere, and then there's really disgusting, awful, violent content and beliefs. So, that has caused me to really slow down and try to understand what's going on and understand the fact, kind of reckon with the fact that, okay, at least the algorithm is seeing there's overlap here. And even if the overlap is just in audience and not in content, this is a big reason why I don't, and I think this is rare for content creators, I don't block followers. Like I don't block trolls. I don't block commenters.
Whoa, you're brave.
And part of the reason why is because, bots aside, if someone is like blatantly attacking another one of my followers in the comments, like I'll say this, I don't block people who are coming at me or coming at like generally my content. If they're coming at somebody else specifically, like you're gone. But And this is probably my growth edge. You know, I'll fiercely protect others, and then I'm like, I'm fine. I'll save that for my IFS session next week. So part of the reason is because, you know, there is this overlap. So if, like, who do I want to be speaking to? Who do I want my content to reach? And yeah, I want it to reach the like therapy curious and hesitant or therapy seeking men. But what are we doing? You know, what am I doing in, you know, the way that I'm like navigating this online world and my like content and this education, if I'm not also wanting to reach the men who are either, you know, fully in that manosphere or on the on-ramp with me. And so I have had, over the course of like the short time I've been on social media, I have had trolls who turned into respectful followers.
Girl, are you
like,
Jesus?
I swear to you,
What?
in my DMs, like apologies. And like, and I can see the thread, right? Like I can see the historic DMs, or I can like, I have the receipts, right? And so, you know, I don't recommend this
No.
for everyone, right? But for me, like based on where I'm positioned, this feels like meaningful change, and this feels like an opportunity, because if we're going to pretend like the manosphere and the men who are listening to the podcast or just getting that content, I think there is research that shows, I don't need the exact number, but it's something crazy. Like the first 12 minutes that like a teenage boy is on a fresh, clean slate algorithm, he's fed like manosphere red pill content. And so if it's there anyway, they're viewing it, whether they're engaging or not. And let's be honest, a lot of manosphere content, not all of it is just like vitriol. Some of it is just stupid boy humor and like dumb shit that is engaging and entertaining. The algorithm's like, okay, you like that, here's more of it. And so if I have an opportunity to disrupt any of that, that seems like a step in the right direction, because it's powerful. And I've had, you know, I've worked with men who have, you know, listened to Andrew Tate and who have consumed, because men, this is part of it, is like men are looking for direction and they're looking for help. They're looking for guidance. They're looking for community. I mean, for better or for worse, the manosphere is offering that. And so if we don't have alternatives and men who want, like, they can identify a problem, but then they're like, let's get a solution. And if therapy if the therapist is showing up just like validating, supporting, encouraging, and not offering some like tangible solutions for men, they're like, well, screw this. Like, I need something I can sink my teeth into. I'm not saying that should be the manosphere, but the algorithm is going to listen and might feed them something that other men are biting at.
Well, men are solution focused.
Yeah.
They are.
I like to say that men, like, we should be offering hope and solutions to men in therapy every single session. Like, I don't let a male client, and this could apply for every single, you know, client we work with, but I think for a lot of my female clients I've worked with, validation is a solution. Like, that's the intervention, is like, oh, you see me, thank you, I can die happy, right?
Yes.
And that's just like not true for the majority of my male clients. And so if we're not showing up for them, if they're not getting the help that they actually are asking for, and some other big, powerful, you know, financially lucrative, right, like, is offering that, if the algorithm's going to think I'm on that like on ramp, then maybe I get to be the off ramp. And if that is true, then I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, and I'm going to keep offering resources. I'm going to keep encouraging other therapists to, you know, self-reflect. And if you love working with men, amazing. Like, get on my directory. Like, these guys are so therapy ready. They're so eager. That's the beautiful part, is like, if you think you might want to work with men or you want them more on your caseload, like, it's so fun. They come in fucking motivated. They're like, let's get shit done. It is so rewarding. And so I'm going to continue to do this work until I don't have to, right? Like, as therapists, we're trying to work ourselves out of a job. and I've maybe bitten off a little bit more than I can chew, but like, I'm so passionate about it. It feels so important, whether it be on a broad scale or just, the individual men that I get to work with, that, like I said, if I get to be a part of that off-ramp and men are trusting me to be that, then that feels like purpose. Like that feels like I'm invested. Like I'm in this, and I'm going to see how far I can take it. And I hope a few more families aren't grieving the loss of a male family member as a result, or a few more young boys feel like there's, hope for them and opportunity in their relationships that they may not have seen otherwise. I hope a few men who thought the lack of connection in their relationship was just the way it had to be are seeing that there's more of an opportunity, because I just have realized that I want to give men a lot more credit. And when I have, they show up.
I think what I'm hearing from you is we as women, while we're looking at the men that do need to be held accountable and the men that do need to be quieted, we also need to be acknowledging the other end of the spectrum. And I think what you said is so powerful at being that off-ramp. And we can't just scream at people to have an off-ramp when they're just on the Autobahn going 120 miles an hour and say, we'll just turn left. You're right. That's not fair. And I think this men's retreat that you're doing is I think that's fucking brilliant. What would you say to women who happen to be partnered to men or who love men in their lives? What is like a little nugget of insight you could give to them of how they could help the men in their life open up more and create that sense of safety in a way that feels sustainable for everybody? What would be like a thought you have in relation to that?
I think the first thing that came to mind, I want women to know that these men are so afraid of disappointing you.
Oof.
So afraid of letting you down. And you may not see that. It doesn't present in a vulnerable way, but it can lead to him shutting down and closing off, and then show up with, irritability and an edge. And so to be able to hold both, to know that he could be struggling in a way that looks like someone who's really hard for me to live with. And again, I'm not excusing
right,
abusive, aggressive, extreme behavior, but he could be struggling in a way that is not telling me he's struggling or what it looks like when I struggle. And not only is it so scary for him to imagine emotionally opening up, because this is something he doesn't have practice with. We're asking him to jump off, the 10-meter high dive without knowing how to swim. And holding that with the fact that he's also terrified that he's going to somehow disappoint you or let you down in doing so, in showing that he's quote unquote weak. And I think the more that we as women can, for the man in your life who you're worried about, the more you can try to understand that, the more that you can be there to give him a hug, like a strong hug when you know he's had a hard day, to say the simple words of, like, I'm worried about you. You don't have to do anything. I'm not going to tell you to go to therapy, but I just want you to know I'm worried about you and I love you. Because the shame that so many men live with already is what is reinforcing his silence. It's reinforcing his distance. It's reinforcing his hesitance to seek out any sort of help. And so if, as like women in his life who love him, if we can do anything to make sure we're not adding to that shame, then we're doing something really powerful. And sometimes just the presence and making sure he knows we see him, that we see it, that we're not oblivious to it. Even if it's clear he doesn't want to talk to us about it, that we're clocking it and we're there. And there's like no pressure to talk to me, no pressure to go to therapy, right? But I'm here. is really powerful for someone who feels completely isolated in that experience.
Extend them compassion.
Yeah. Seems simple, right? But it's tough. Like, it is, we as women, we've got complicated relationships with compassion towards men, right? Like with saying that they kind of sometimes deserve more than maybe they're offering to us. Like it may mean, setting aside a little bit of your own resentment of what he's not offering you. But like, if you really are worried about him, that's what you can do.
Right. Wow. Okay. Well, I'm going to have to go chew on all of this for a little bit. And I think that's a good thing.
That's my hope. Like, yeah. I want to give some different perspective. I want to shine a light on what I see. And, hopefully if there can be even just a little bit of a shift. So there's like a little bit more room. I'm not like my messaging here, my messaging online is not to women. Like, I'm telling men, I'm validating their experiences, but I'm saying, here's how you got to work on yourself. This is what you do. This is how you take accountability, right? Like, I'm not suggesting women are responsible for this. And so if we even, as clinicians in the field are encouraging each other to, take a look at your website. If I want men to reach out and give me a call, like, does this website seem like I do? And, if not, can I make some edits to my Psychology Today? Can I join Audra's directory? Like, can I make it so that I am available? Because I think we are in a really unique position, if we are wanting to be, to create spaces for these men where, generally we're telling these men, go work on yourselves. And you and I, we are on the front lines of being able to do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Audra, truly.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. This is so fun.
Yeah. Oh, God. I'm glad.
I love these chats. I'm so freaking passionate about it. And there's so much to say, and there's so much nuance to it. So I love being able to have like some longer form opportunities to be able to dig into it, because it's messy, it's complicated, and it can be skewed so quickly in, a 60-second video that the algorithm is feeding you. So I appreciate the opportunity, truly.
Yeah, no, we will probably more likely than not be having you back on. So if you have questions that you wish I would have asked Dr. Audra, throw it in the comments. Audra, where can people find you?
Best place to find me is social media, Instagram or TikTok at Dr. Audra Horney, Horney. Get all my resources there for therapists, for men, for the men in your lives. So I hope that it's educational and informative for you. And follow along. Love to have you there.
Amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye, guys.